Hello, welcome back to Tangents with Lydon and Laing. We took a week hiatus, but we're back, bigger, better than ever, hopefully. And yeah, this week we want to talk about scapegoats in society.
Yep.
I think the first thing to start with is the actual origin of the word scapegoating.
Yeah.
It comes from the Bible, funny enough, where a lot of things come from. But that's a topic for another episode. But yeah, what it comes from is the book of Leviticus, where the Israelites would place all their sins ritually on the goat's head. And then I can leave to...
Or like putting like all the juju in there, or whatever they...
Yeah, and then that, you can, leave it to your imagination.
Who thinks of that?
Yeah,
I feel like the goat's head is the correct vessel for
literally
escaping my goats.
Yeah. So that's where it comes from. It was a ritual. I think we
kind
can
of paganism, probably.
I think we can all imagine that what actually happens to the poor goat.
Yeah.
And the ritual.
Lives
but
a
yeah,
long and happy life.
Yeah. No. Probably not. But no, I think it's also the correlation between scapegoating and violence.
Okay.
Is interesting to take from that, you know?
Well, you mean it's a violent ritual?
Yeah, and that's where scapegoating comes from.
Yeah,
so
and it's why it's like so you're taking like an innocent vessel
and
you're placing all the blame and wrongdoing on it, and then just eradicating it. Yeah, so it's symbolic in that sense.
Very.
But then I guess that's yeah.
So that's
it's a well-used word. Then basically, it's evolved to mean what it means in the modern day pretty well. Then I guess. So congratulations whoever did that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of fits perfectly into how does it relate in the modern world. I mean, at this time in the pandemic, I mean, who's being scapegoated? I know.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say. Scapegoating goes on a lot, but I mean, students to an extent.
Yeah, well, there was obviously the Conservative government. We'll name and shame them right here. Well, just in terms of any time, and this has been the same throughout every Conservative government. Yeah. It's always someone else's fault. These things, and so obviously the second wave of the virus, a lot of the kind of the talk about it and the way that they're trying to spin it is that, you know, the reason there's this massive increase is because of young people and their activities. But what was Eat Out to Help Out? What were all these kind of things going on where it was like, oh, you need to get back out there. And then within 2 weeks, it's like, no, you've caused the virus to go massively over. So let's check this out. And you could then start to think like, you know, people start to think, is it my fault? The people who are getting blamed often know it's not their fault. But then, you know, Joe Public will buy that up because it suits a narrative. Yeah. And actually, the official statistics of like tracked positive COVID cases, 6% are from restaurants and bars. Yeah, like they think that's about it. It's like I think it's 45% are from schools. Yeah, you know, where it's like, you know, who's to say what should go, shouldn't go? But 6%, and they're blaming a massive thing on them. Yeah, and then from that, what's happened is this is like quite recent development is all of the uni students have been told that they have to go to the city of their university, pay for their halls, which is like what, 4,000 a term or something like that. I don't know the exact, like more than that. Yeah, depending on where you are as well. But then they get there, and then like within a day, it's like, oh, you're in lockdown. You can't leave the building. You can't. And these kids are all there, like, what's going on? They've got one class a week online. A lot of people. And you look back at this, like the fact of the matter is that the Conservative Party, 25% of all of their donors are big property investors. Okay. So the whole business of halls and student housing, if in September there was no one, you know, putting down these deposits, paying these months up front, you've got a lot of Tory donors and people in that atmosphere,
property developers
losing a lot of money. Yeah. So it's nothing to do with the public health, public safety. No. It's nothing to do with trying to reduce the virus. It's literally just satisfying the donors.
Yeah, of course. You know, and that's
because like you don't give a donation unless you want something. It's not like, we think you're doing a real good job. Have that. I'm never going to come tap you on the shoulder and say, look, we need you to. So I'll just say one more thing about that in specific, which was I've got got it written down here actually. So yeah, this guy Richard Desmond, he got greenlit on a 1,500 luxury home site on the Isle of Dogs, which you know is a really poor area of London. Apart from obviously like Canary Wharf, the actual housing there is and it's in Tower Hamlets, which is one of the poorest areas in the whole
London,
of the UK.
London and the UK.
So they've been greenlit on this 1,500 home luxury condo kind of complex, and that's against the advice of planning inspectors. And they got greenlit one day before a change in regulations that would have had Richard Desmond pay £45 million in contributions to the Tower Hamlets Council, which is one of the most deprived areas of the country. And it's actually someone he is friends with, the current housing minister of the Conservative government. They've seen pictured together, laughing at
I can imagine.
It's the cronyism, and how is it legal? It should be that's like insider trading. That should be jailable offence. As long with any politic like lying about anything, it should be. Either you're out or you're going to jail if you lie for your own personal gain in politics.
Yeah, definitely.
That should be a criminal offence. Why is it not?
I don't know.
So explain that to me.
Yeah, it's so strange that you see the relationships between politicians and their friends. I mean, you only have to look at the donors of the Conservative Party. I think you mentioned the other day about some of the property owners who have donated in the past or in the past year and how much they've donated to the Conservative Party.
Oh, mad. Well,
and that buys you influence, right? Let's not pretend.
That's all it is.
If you're donating an amount of money to the government, do you not think that in some senses you may get priority over other business owners?
That's all it is. I mean, it's not in some sense, that is the purpose of lobbying, and also the thing is that the numbers in terms of the grand scheme of things don't seem that much, but what it really is it's you're buying by investing money into the Conservative Party and towards these ministers, you're also saying that in your corporation or your business, when they want to leave office, there's a cushy executive role for you.
Well, that's really interesting. Just on that quickly, William Hague. So he was the poster boy of the Conservative Party during Thatcher's years. He spoke at the Conservative Party conference in the 80s as a young 15-year-old Conservative right-wing boy from a council estate. So it was that kind of Thatcher, buy your own council home. And he was really, pushed forward.
From that.
So he came into the Conservative Party with no money, from no money. He became leader of the Conservative Party, not the Prime Minister, leader of the Conservative Party during the Blair years. Not for a long period of time, but he had that power and clout. He left office. Took a hiatus away from politics for maybe 18 months, 2 years, and came back to politics as a multi-millionaire.
There you go. And it's who you know.
Of course.
And there's no checks and balances against this happening.
No.
It's ridiculous. Like, what was it? Sajid David?
Sajid Javid.
Sajid David. Sajid Javid. He, what is he now? He was the Chancellor.
Yeah, he was.
Now
for a very brief time.
Yeah, but now he's a special advisor to JP Morgan in the City of London.
Yeah.
Like, what? How is this? This is like the equivalent of like army generals will wind up their career, or even before when they might retire in the army, they get tapped by like Raytheon or Boeing or these weapons contractors, and they say, we'll pay you loads of money because they know how to start wars. Well, they know how to get those weapons sold and then used. If anyone's going to know how to get a multi-million-pound weapon used in the field, it's going to be someone who has been in the field in these positions. And there's all of these things like the public sector is just a stepping stone to the private sector for so many people, because all they care about is money. They were never public servants to help the public. They don't actually have any moral fibre when it comes to that, because they're living in kind of the dragon of capitalism, whatever it is, the failed economic model and seems to be destroying the world.
And it shows during a pandemic. You see investment in the public sector from the government during a pandemic, because they've been propped up. The private sector's been propped up, but when a pandemic happens, we see the fruits in the proof's in the pudding. I mean, like, you see what happens. All these businesses are struggling, but I mean, what about businessmen making money off the pandemic as well?
Well, yeah, so that's some interesting. I've got a few things down here. So UK billionaires, this was in June. UK billionaires had seen their personal wealth grow by 25 billion during the pandemic. Yet unemployment is potentially up to 4 million, and that's by June. So I don't know what the levels are now. I couldn't find an exact number, but basically 430 million small enterprises are at risk around the world. But the world's largest corporations, I think it's the top 100, have made like 17 trillion over the pandemic. So it's basically, and that's just off low-wage workers, funneling profit to shareholders and billionaires who are really just a small group of largely like white men in rich nations who don't pay tax, all offshore.
Well, look at Bezos. He's about to become a trillionaire.
Well, he could pay every worker in Amazon $110,000 bonus like right now, and he'd be just as rich as he was before the pandemic. And it just, like, I'm not saying that's
that he has to do
I'm not saying that's the answer, but I mean that just shows how ludicrous the amount of money he has is.
Exactly.
Like
the when you make the comparison,
and like the human mind isn't actually evolved to think of numbers that big. So people don't realize how much a billion is. Like a billion is like it just doesn't.
Well, you
make
can
sense.
equate it to
like,
science as well when you look at the universe and the distance between planets. When you actually look at the mathematics behind it, it's mind-boggling. The numbers, the distance between planets. So numbers are something that is so hard to get in your head.
Around. It's crazy. They did like a little video I watched actually, and it was basically saying what Jeff Bezos could buy with his money, and it was like everything in the world essentially. Like, do you know what I mean? It was like 10 super yachts, like 50 fighter jets, like 1,000 houses. Like literally, there was like, and it's like, what's going on there? How have we allowed ourselves when there's so much suffering, equality? Of course. And obviously, I don't think the way our governments run is at all in a good shape to take on a lot of money and distribute it fairly.
No,
if we had,
proper vetting.
If we had that manifesto come in, the Labour one, which actually wouldn't even need that much input, and found out how to reduce the deficit and actually have loads of social programs by like 2022 or something. It was like you read it and you're like, this is incredible.
And the argument against that is always,
it's like the best business plan I've ever read. Like, and then the argument against it,
is always but it's all talk, and we're going to go into a financial crash again, which is something that the Conservative Party have blamed on a Labour government for the last 10 years in office.
Financial crashes always happen under like one's recessions within our country always happen under Conservative governments.
And austerity, of course.
But
back to scapegoating a bit. I think we have to look at like immigrants in the UK especially, and not just the UK, around the world.
What's the thing you said earlier, that how it's easier to attack them or easier to...
So that's it's something we learned in philosophy. I think it's René Girard. It's like talking about scapegoating, and how it's easy to scapegoat someone when you're not going to get anything back. There's no retaliation. So it's easy to scapegoat immigrants because they really in this country they have the smallest voice, which is sad, really.
And they're basically trying to start a life here and try stay out of trouble because they know how much xenophobia there is still in this in England and in Spain. But
one point especially on the scapegoating of immigrants is the shortage of council houses, which for years it's been blamed on immigrants taking council houses. And this is what the point we're both trying to make is how ludicrous it is to scapegoat and blame things, policies, the introduction of buying your own council houses. So the same property developers are buying council houses which should be there for the people who genuinely need them. And then you're telling me that the immigrants are the reason that the council houses aren't allowed. Maybe it's we lived in a privately owned. So it was the council estate in Bermondsey. So there was people. Our neighbours were people from the local area. We were renting of a private landlord. So although, you know, we were in a way taking away someone's opportunity for a council house. Obviously, you have to find somewhere to live, and in London that's the case.
They just don't build enough new housing. That's low. There's so many like soulless glass towers going up all across London. Mostly empty, bought from some dirty money. Like they think 80% of the money that passes through the City of London is actually like illegal fucking funds. Like it's mad. Like these new papers that have come out recently, it's like a big leak and it's crazy. It's like every bank has been found out to be laundering money for like international crime syndicates and shit.
Dirty
and nothing will happen with it, I'm sure. Like, but then you just think. I mean, like that's the thing with like council housing. And then the private landlord, and people say, no, but we have the right to do this. I don't think you should have the right to do it. I think there should be a limit to how many properties you can own. I don't think being a landlord.
Well, I think there should be more vetting.
I don't think being a landlord should be a viable career choice. I think the housing shortages and problems we have right now, we don't have room for people who are like, but I want to make more money. I'm sorry, in society now, it's like I genuinely believe this. Like if you're a landlord and you're profiting and charging people extortionate amounts,
students,
and not even necessarily looking after their houses, and it being a very difficult situation, and you're raking it in from these houses that you've bought for nothing, and then you're now charging like
and
triple.
Your
and
property portfolio grows.
Yeah, and they were built for people, and people become millionaires, billionaires off this stuff, and it's disgusting.
Yeah,
how can you be that man and walk past a homeless person on the street and not feel like I'm a piece of shit? Like I own all these houses, loads of them empty maybe, loads of them people paying extortionate amounts, loads of people about to be evicted, and I'm right here, one person. Like how can you be rich and then look at people suffering and not be like, oh God, why am I so rich? Like it's gross.
It's strange to imagine. It's strange to imagine how to put yourself in those shoes. It's you can't really that someone could be so oblivious to it. But I mean, especially with the buying your own council house, to an extent, it's like some people have been empowered that they've been able, they've been in a house where for maybe 34 years where they've paid this amount of money in rent.
Yeah, but if you're buying it and living in it yourself,
that's what I mean. That's where the vetting comes into it. You're not trying to monopolise. So you have to vet the buyers of council houses. You can't let property developers buy these council houses, take them away from people who need them. You have to do proper vetting, proper find out. You have to apply for the right to buy the council house and show that you've been living there for an amount of time, and these aren't getting sold privately, because it is disgusting. It is disgusting. Yeah.
Well, another interesting one to do with property developers is, basically, so I've got read or something here. It's basically about, as I said earlier, restaurants and bars and stuff, they think make up about 6% of COVID infection and spread, because it's actually quite an easy one to control in terms of like seating people, social distancing, stuff like that. So basically, this was something I was reading. This is like more of an opinion piece, but you could see the way that the Tories operate and how deeply in bed they are with these massive property people. So many of them. And they just want these, they get bills passed all the time on land that shouldn't be built on.
Like who?
What's his name? I said his name earlier. Richard Desmond. He got his property green lit when the planning was saying there shouldn't be these flats built here. But one day before, he had to pay 45 mil to the council to like help the area rather than just building this big soulless building. They greenlit his project one day before that legislation came through, and that was the housing minister. But the other thing that's kind of, it's like opinion, but I could see it being true. So especially somewhere in Bristol where house prices are going up and up and up still, there's a lot of venues and stuff that now are looking like they're going to close down forever because they can't. And these are in prime areas. They're often city centre, pubs, like community kind of hubs, like bars, pubs, restaurants. And a lot of these places, especially live music venues, it's hard to build high-end housing around them because you've got the noise problems, people spilling out. So often what you do see in like Bristol and London, they'll build these things and buy somewhere that's been in the community for ages, and then they'll start complaining. Eventually it gets shut down. It's happened in Bristol to a few different places. And I do think this is disaster capitalism. You know, it's people like the Rees Moggs and those kind of, that's like that's their mantra, you know.
Yeah.
And it's basically like saying, all right, this shit's happening, yeah. How much property is going to be available soon that we can then develop on?
Of course.
You know,
that does make sense.
They're counting on the hospitality business shutting down and struggling, and they will buy up the space and the arts, all of it. 'Cause it doesn't matter to them.
The arts has never been funded well.
They don't have a culture, the Tories, like apart from just like killing innocent grouse or just chasing around.
But yeah, bringing it back to immigrants, I do think it's really important to touch on the scapegoating that goes on around the world. We talked about the council housing shortages, how that was narrated and by the press to an extent, and especially
and the benefits crownger.
Of course. But back to the immigrants as well. That you know, apparently people come over and they claim benefits straight away.
Like £27 a week or something.
Yeah, I mean it's minimal. It's minimal. Nothing, in the grand scheme, like we've been talking about, the owners, the property portfolios, the businessmen around the world,
and corporate tax breaks.
It's really a smidgen.
Well, what did Google paid like? 15,000 in corporation tax in the UK.
Yes.
It's like, what? How much you make? 30,000.
God, it's ludicrous.
I want to get into that at some point, but I've got a massive list of.
But no, with the immigrants, it's like you just feel. I mean, we touched on it in a sense of what they do in the first episode, especially during coronavirus, working with the NHS.
Yeah.
But especially going back towards Brexit, and it's hard not to, because Brexit was a massive thing to happen in the UK because it split the country in half, really.
Yeah. What was it, 49-51?
Yeah. So, and you have to look at how it was politicised, the stay and remain and what they were pushing. Yeah. And especially...
Well, they didn't make any sense.
Well, yeah. Well, it's, again, the scapegoating comes into it because they were scapegoating foreign bureaucrats on policies on social, policies on our own healthcare. 350 million we'd be able to have. So wait a sec. Yeah. You're not taking any account of the failings in our healthcare system, the social problems, austerity, and you were blaming it that there's this money that's been taken away by foreign bureaucrats. Yeah. Sorry, that's bollocks.
It's been proven to be a lie as well.
It's been proven to be a lie.
Yeah. It's literally Brexit is just most of it's just a nationalist thing.
Yeah, no, it's hard not to agree. It's hard not to agree with that. And yeah, scapegoating in society will always happen.
Yeah, well, because no one wants to take the blame as well for things.
Of course.
So that,
no, definitely.
But that's the thing. Imagine if we lived like that. How often does it come out that a Conservative has lied, or like any politician has lied? That lie has come out. The lie has affected policy, and then what? You don't face any criminal charges. I mean, it's not necessarily like a lying something into policy. There's so much mistruth. It's so much of the kind of politics nowadays. Yeah. And you can catch it out. You just have to Google something. No, and it's like, that's a lie. Like Matt Hancock talking about PPE. And you just Google what he's saying. And you're like, oh, that's a lie. Like all the doctors saying, no, he's lying. So he's on TV just lying. Like, why? What's happened? Has it always been like this? And we're just noticing it more now? Like...
But dude, it is crazy. Especially, what I want to get across is that, I mean, talking personally, I'm someone who has been affiliated as a member to the Labour Party. Yes. I've gone to meetings in London, but I don't want to put across that this is a whole agenda against the Conservative Party, because right now there's problems in the Labour Party that has made me as someone who...
I'd struggle to vote for them again.
I'd struggle to vote for any politician.
Well, just after what they did to Jeremy Corbyn and stuff, it's disgusting.
Well, just the like we were talking about, the lies, the constant... It's hard to...
Well, we almost won the election in 2017 if it wasn't for moving around key players to different marginal seats. Yeah. And they did that. That was a deliberate sabotage from within the Labour Party. They'd rather the Tories win. Yeah. So that they are Tories, basically, aren't they? That whole new Labour front bench, are they? Yeah. It's Tories, like Tory light. That's what it is. We had a chance, but it's not going to be a while until we get another one.
But you mentioned something that we should definitely touch on. the benefit scroungers in the
benefit scroungers,
this scapegoating of people on benefits, people who a lot of people may have had real difficulties in early life. Let's not pretend that people who may be on benefits, people who have been in care systems, the atrocities in the 80s, 90s, young people who have been abused sexually in care homes, these people who have had real problems, they may turn to drugs, they may turn to drinks.
Need a social security net.
So what, what we're scapegoating a whole plethora of people. And what how many people are unemployed at the moment, did you say?
I think it's going up, it was going up to 4 mil in late June.
Okay,
I
so
couldn't get an exact figure.
So it's funny that, I don't know, have you seen much news about benefit scroungers at the moment? No. When all of a sudden actually people are relying on social security?
Middle class people are on benefits essentially.
There you go.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, and also, you just look at people like the rags complaining about, the tabloids complaining about benefit scroungers. You actually look at the money. I think it was something tiny, it's 3 million.
That's important.
Comes into benefit scroungers. I think Google dodged fucking I don't know, 800,000 times that in tax. Google, Amazon, Facebook, all the big tech companies, the banks, I'm sure all the supermarkets, football teams, everyone, because there's so many loopholes and they're not technically breaking the law. But that's why we also need to just completely, there needs to be a flat rate tax code, which it's very difficult to get any kind of break for. Because at the end of the day, why if we're taking Britain back, the people we need to take Britain back from are the corporations that milk our economy and don't pass anything down. Trickle down economics is a myth. It's not a thing.
The argument is that we rely on, if we tax those companies more, they're going to take their business elsewhere.
Yeah, but they're still going to sell in our country. So you just tax all the profits. You're going to make more money from that than them just being based in our country. You tax Google's profits 50% in the UK. That's a good chunk of money. You just say, and they're not going to then go, well, we're not going to sell things in England anymore, because then they're still losing 50% of that money. Just got to play hardball with them. I'm not a tax expert, but at the end of the day, tax is tax. I don't know the ins and outs of the codes and loopholes and stuff, but at the end of the day, just tax people what they owe.
It's not right, is it?
It's not right, and it's austerity shouldn't have to happen. The NHS should be fully funded. This country could be booming. The UK. We end up talking about the UK more, but
of course,
it could be booming. Since the 2000s, and obviously the Blair stuff was a bit of a dark period in terms of a lot of things, but there was a lot of regulations. Loosening the banking regulations, privatising everything.
Which was a Labour government.
All basic utilities should be free. Who can make how on earth can someone make money on water to sell to me, or electricity, or do you know what I mean? These things should be built by the state, owned by the state, and then just run it's just a utility.
Why do you think companies like BT are called British Telecom? Why do you think companies like British Gas? Because they were
Petroleum, and
they were publicly owned.
And then people were like, oh, but it didn't work so well in the blah blah. It's because there's been a neoliberal war against things non-privatised. There has literally been a war against it, and the newspapers for so long, unions this, unions that. It's it's not reliable. We can get better. All the trains in the UK are owned by the Spanish government, the German government, the French government. So they are actually now making money off all of our ridiculously expensive train journeys. They're owned by the actual government. They're making money off all those ridiculous train journeys. These are contracts that have been sold by the Tories, who are sitting behind the Brexit thing of take back control of Britain, but sell all its assets to overseas. Do you know what I mean? And people actually buy into this. It's Lord have mercy.
I know. But I think also one thing we've got to mention, because it's something that's close to both of our hearts. During the pandemic, it was funny how within maybe 2 or 3 weeks, Premier League footballers started to get scapegoated for their salaries.
Yeah.
So while the country was going into lockdown, Premier League footballers were actually being mentioned targeted by politicians about their salaries. Yeah. Now, firstly, the first thing I want to mention, and it's something we've spoke about before, and we agree on, is hang on. What about CEOs of companies? What about the
investment
banking and that whole sector? But the footballers who pay 50% tax on most of their earnings.
Top tax bracket, I think.
Yeah, and let's also there are some footballers who make.
Oh, it's some obscene money.
But
it's coming from a private source, which is surely what all the right-wingers love, everything to be privatised. But it's mainly right-wing people getting angry about it.
Yeah, well, it's demonising the game as well.
And the working-class athletes as well. That's obviously a big part
of course.
Of it. But, and then it's the fact it's like, look, they're making a fair bit of money. But it's a drop in the ocean compared to how much tax is being avoided, how much companies are paying out dividends, to their shareholders rather than investing in keeping workers fed and stuff. And they're like companies claiming furlough and then paying the furlough to their shareholders rather than to the employees.
Crazy.
And like laying people off so they can just cash out mad money.
But on the back to footballers,
it's an ideological thing though.
It's
an easy target.
Yeah, it's really strange. But I think it's important to say in an ideal world as well. I can't speak for you, but I can imagine that you're of the same opinion. Is that I would love in an ideal world that the football clubs were more publicly owned, like the German model,
100%,
Bundesliga, and unfortunately that doesn't happen. That's not what happens in the Premier League. No. Okay, but the Premier League is a product that has been
it's a product
that's shipped all around the world and makes a large amount of money. Right? So who are the people playing in the Premier League? So if the Premier League are making, I don't know, 627 million, I think was the last figure for TV revenue for a season. So where do you want that money to go?
Yeah.
Who deserves that money?
Yeah.
The people who are
the shareholders in the Premier League,
or maybe the footballers who are playing week in, week out, and they're going through a lot. They're putting their bodies through a lot. But all I want to say, in an ideal world, you would want the football clubs to be more publicly owned. You want the supporters to have
transparency,
more of an impact on policy.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But it's
also
not the
an
case.
Ideological thing as well, isn't it? Because like the footballer has always been a scapegoat because it's an easy one to punch down on from big news organisations. It gets headlines, and the numbers 100%. Are always incredible, and then the players can't really talk back that much. Like they're starting to a bit more, but it's always kind of a thing. Like your kind of men are not engaged with
Daniel Rashford,
a legend. But
no, his name's Marcus.
Oh, Marcus, obviously.
Daniel Rashford.
Matt Hancock. What he's doing is great. But he shouldn't have to be doing it.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's another piece of like feel-good dystopia. Like how much stuff do you see in the news where it's like, oh my God, this guy went and paid bail to get this guy, homeless man, out of jail. He'd been in there for 2 years. Such a lovely story. I'm like, the homeless man was in jail for 2 years because he couldn't afford bail. How's that? Can we go past the nice bit and actually look at how fucked up that is from the initial part? Like that's something I was reading about in America. Free school meals,
that was the Rashford.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant. Big up Marcus.
Big up Marcus, but he shouldn't have to be doing that.
A lad who's grown up in, I think, Moss Side, Hume, those kind of areas in Manchester where they probably do heavily rely on lunch, free school meals, and he actually did really push that forward. But then to be called Daniel Rashford.
What was that on BBC News?
Well, it was Matt Hancock and his
Matt Hancock.
addressing the nation. I think he got mixed up with Marcus Rashford and Daniel Radcliffe. Because I think...
he probably loves Harry Potter.
I think maybe Daniel Radcliffe's more to his taste, let's say. I don't think he's ever watched a football game. And that's, if you don't like football, you don't like football. That's cool. But maybe get his name right. Show a bit of respect. But back to footballers, like you said, it is ideological. It's the working man's game.
Easy. They're an easy target to distract people from things. Like how often I remember I used to have my mind a little bit twisted onto that. You see it so much in the news, and people like talking about how ridiculous footballers' wages are. It's like, they are. There's a lot. There's nothing near to what some people who are leeches to society, mate.
Yeah.
You know, like oil and gas CEOs or like bankers and like, you know what I mean? These people who actually cause real harm to our planet with the systems that they work within, and they make like hundreds times what footballer does. Footballer just brings you a bit of joy.
Yeah.
The money's coming from somewhere else. It's not public.
The product
money.
sold by the class of the player that's in the Premier League,
and they pay tax.
and they pay 50%
They
tax.
pay 50% tax, so they're bringing in a lot of money.
I know, but that's not mentioned. But what's funny is, can you actually imagine in the House of Commons an MP decide to scapegoat, because it is scapegoating, scapegoating CEOs of companies, the ones who are putting money into. Come on, it's ludicrous. And this is the thing.
Maybe footballers should start donating to political parties, and they maybe get better ride. Like.
No,
obviously not. Fuck that.
But yeah, it's definitely something. I mean, also I think to look at a bit further into the portrayal of footballers, and it's a bit of a tangent, but we love a tangent, don't we?
Tangent.
If you look at race, what comes into race and footballers, there was something I've wanted to mention for a while. There was the Daily Mail ran a story on Tosin Adarabioyo, who's a young Man City player, potential defence centre half, played at West Brom on loan. Never started a Premier League game, but was on 25,000 a week. The article read, young footballer who's never, this is in the Daily Mail, who's never made a Premier League start, splashes out on £2.25 million mansion. Okay? That's one article. Then a young white footballer, who's a great footballer.
Same paper, is it?
Same paper, Phil Foden, spends £2 million on a mansion near the other mansion. Footballers, they usually live near each other.
Yeah, sure.
The paper runs the headline: young Man City star buys mum £2 million mansion. Buys mum £2 million mansion. So I think it was Raheem Sterling posted this on his Instagram.
Just shows the kind of the massive divide, doesn't it? Look.
So sorry, Tosin can't provide for his family.
It's literally just racism. It's just stone cold racism.
It is. It's undeniable.
And it's still been. And what's that? The Daily Mail.
Daily Mail.
The one that supported the Nazis before World War II. Still same ownership. Still supports Nazis. I will not retract that comment. They are hateful. It shouldn't be allowed to be sold. It's hate speech, a lot of their stuff, and it's amazing that people buy it and eat it. And now imagine all that hatred and misinformation swirling around your body.
And talk about scapegoating.
No matter the right wing's so angry, but confused angry, not like the left, which some people confused angry, but some people actually know what's going on and oh my god. Here we go again, more of these lies, and people just eat it up. Oh, Boris. Well, notice the papers have started calling him Johnson now, which is like, you know what I mean? So maybe his time's coming up. Then who's next? Priti Patel probably. Oh God, she's even worse. She's actually smart. God.
Yeah, no, it's scary.
Proper Darth Vader vibes.
It is scary. But yeah, it's something that happens in society. It's something how can you change it? How are people not going to be scapegoated?
To be honest with you, I think people, and I don't know, it's going to be hard to get this going, but I think you'd have to get like ignorant people, or people who aren't, because people aren't necessarily bigots out of choice. You know what I mean? It's like lack of education, lack of ever meeting someone of another race or another socioeconomic background, all these things. And you just gotta people just gotta fucking have a chin wag,
of course.
Read something that's not online, like clicky. Like read like a book by someone who's actually a real thinker in the game. Some Chomsky, I don't know, some fucking...
No, definitely. It's important to...
Top Gear magazine.
Or Michael Atherton's history from 2006 to 2016, which is a great read, by the way, if you like cricket.
Yeah, they're actually making my favourite sci-fi book into a TV show, Netflix, Three Body Problem. If you like reading, Three Body Problem, sci-fi, best book I've ever read.
Yeah, but no, it's it's something that's a scorn on society. It is that we so easily scapegoat and it goes back to that René Girard quote that it's easy to scapegoat someone when there's no retaliation. Yeah. If they're not,
and especially if you're doing a shit job yourself and you need someone to
deflect.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean,
what was the thing we were talking about schools earlier? That was an interesting one about with regards to just the complete lack of funding and the way people, So I've obviously when you get into like uni and stuff, or you get to know your learning styles better. Yeah. You kind of realise whether you're a kinetic learner, a listener, a reader, a writer. Yeah. And you can kind of focus more on what works for you best. Whereas in school, like up until you leave, essentially, you hear about these things, but nothing's ever tailored towards you. And obviously we're in a school with classes of like 30 plus, secondary school. Yeah. So that's hard. But that's because our like education system is just so underfunded. Yeah. Teachers are not paid enough, they're overworked. Yeah. And if you pay teachers more, and look, the money exists. I refuse to believe that we're about to spend 90 billion on a missile that apparently doesn't even work. You know what I mean? It's obviously made by some Tory basement crony or something, I don't know. But the Trident shit, and it's not even fit for purpose, but they're like, we're fucking doing it. Or like HS2. Yeah. Like what? Oh, you need to get from London to Birmingham in 2 hours an hour quicker.
Because the safety of...
It's just money. The money's there.
That's
the money's there. It's all these vanity products for the Tories. But like put that money into education. Yeah. Put that money into social services. And you'll literally see society turn around. Become a more equal and just lit place.
I just want to... Yeah, I think you're completely right. And it's something that actually in the next week's episode we're going to focus on education and our experiences about education. So we'll definitely go into it in more detail. But you're absolutely right. But we've gone through a lot. I think it's been good talking about this because it's something that people probably are aware of and
it's good to collate the facts and opinions into one place.
Opinions and talk about it because just speaking about stuff is cathartic, man.
Yeah, definitely. I had some more things, but I think I kind of want to save them for another. Yeah, just in terms of like, I want to go a bit more into. I want to just look at the timeline of how the Conservatives have dealt with the pandemic, and then kind of analyse like what the points were when they say one thing and then they lie about another thing, and then they say one thing, and then I just want to get I might even draw it out, like Rain Man it on the wall.
We could put a graph here, and we could do all politicians. Yeah. We could have their name there, and then we could fact check what they say. Because let's not pretend that it's just the Conservative Party.
No.
Dude, politicians.
But they're in the majority.
They're the government.
They're the government.
So they need to be responsible.
Which they won't be.
Of course not. No. And that's a good way to end it.
Yeah. All right.
Being a good podcast. Take care.
Sayonara, baby.